Does Donald J. Trump need to be president to have the GCR RV? Hey folks, let's talk money, or more specifically, the global financial system. It's the backbone of our interconnected world. It's the engine that drives trade, investment, and economic growth. But what happens when that engine starts sputtering? What happens when the very foundation it's built on seems shaky? For years, economists and analysts have been raising red flags about imbalances in the global financial system. They point to things like volatile exchange rates, unsustainable debt levels, and currencies seemingly out of whack with the real economic picture. Now, these concerns have given rise to some radical ideas about hitting the reset button. We're talking about the global currency reset, or GCR, and revaluation, or RV. These concepts, once relegated to the fringes of financial discourse, are gaining traction in some circles. They're sparking debate, fueling speculation, and raising questions about the future of money as we know it. So, what exactly are the GCR and RV? In a nutshell, they represent a proposed overhaul of the global financial system. Think of it as a massive realignment of currencies. Proponents argue that many currencies are misaligned. They say some, like the Iraqi dinar and the Vietnamese dong, are significantly undervalued. They believe these currencies should be revalued to reflect their true economic potential. Now, this revaluation, this adjustment, is at the heart of the GCR. It's about establishing a level playing field, ensuring that currencies accurately reflect the economic strength and assets of the nations they represent. It's about moving away from a system some see as rigged, manipulated, and prone to instability. But it's not just about shifting numbers on a spreadsheet. The implications of a GCR and RV are far-reaching. They have the potential to reshape global power dynamics, impact international trade, and influence the daily lives of people around the world. In this exploration, we're going to delve into the intricate world of the GCR and RV. We'll examine the arguments for and against such a monumental shift. We'll dissect the complexities, the potential benefits, and the unavoidable risks. We'll unravel the role of political leadership, the need for international cooperation, and the involvement of powerful financial institutions. Get ready for a wild ride as we navigate the labyrinth of global finance and grapple with the question, is a global currency reset fact or fiction? Alright, let's break down these acronyms causing a stir in the financial world. GCR and RV. GCR stands for Global Currency Reset. It's like hitting the reset button on the global economy. RV, or revaluation, is a key part of this reset. It means adjusting undervalued currencies upwards. Imagine a stock suddenly reflecting its true value. That's the basic idea behind revaluation. Section 2. The case for undervaluation, IQD and VND in focus. At the heart of the GCR and RV debate lies the contention that certain currencies are significantly undervalued. Two currencies often cited as prime examples are the Iraqi dinar, or IQD, and the Vietnamese dong, or VND. Proponents argue that these currencies, despite representing nations with growing economies and significant resources, are trading far below their true potential. Take the Iraqi dinar, for example. Iraq, with its vast oil reserves, should theoretically have a much stronger currency. However, years of conflict, political instability, and economic mismanagement have taken their toll, leaving the dinar languishing on the foreign exchange markets. Similarly, Vietnam, a country experiencing rapid industrialization and economic growth, has seen its currency, the dong, remain relatively weak. Factors like government policies and a history of inflation have contributed to this undervaluation. Now, those who believe in the RV argue that a correction is long overdue. They point to the inherent value of these nations, their resources, their workforce, and their economic potential, asserting that a revaluation would simply reflect this reality. But critics counter that undervaluation, while a real phenomenon, is a complex issue with deep-rooted causes. They argue that simply revaluing a currency without addressing the underlying economic fundamentals is like putting a band-aid on a broken bone. It might provide a temporary boost, but it won't solve the underlying problem. Section 3. Revaluation, a potential solution. So, how would revaluation actually work in practice? Imagine major governments and central banks agreeing on a new, higher value for the Iraqi dinar or the Vietnamese dong. It would involve a gradual adjustment to avoid shocks to the global financial system. Their money would be worth significantly more on the international market. But revaluation can have downsides too. It can lead to inflation and impact a country's competitiveness. Revaluation is a double-edged sword, bringing both opportunities and risks. Section 4, Beyond Numbers. The broader implications of revaluation. Revaluation extends beyond adjusting numbers on a currency exchange board. It delves into global power dynamics, economic justice, and trade balance. Recognizing the true value of a nation's resources and people, proponents see it as a chance to break free from an unfair system. Critics argue revaluation alone isn't a silver bullet. True progress requires addressing corruption, infrastructure, and education. The debate touches on economic fairness and global power dynamics. Now let's talk about the elephant in the room, actually making a global currency reset and revaluation happen. Think about it, you're talking about changing the very fabric of the global financial system. This isn't some minor tweak, folks, it's a complete overhaul, and that kind of change doesn't happen without some serious heavy lifting. First and foremost, you'd need an unprecedented level of international cooperation. Imagine getting the world's superpowers, all with their own interests and agendas, to agree on something this monumental. We're talking about the United States, China, the European Union, Russia, Japan, the whole gang, all singing the same tune on the global currency reset. That's a tough ask, even in the best of times. But it's not just about getting everyone to the table, it's about getting them to agree on a whole slew of complex issues. How do you determine the new values of currencies? What assets back these currencies? How do you manage the transition without triggering chaos in the markets? Frankly, the level of coordination and consensus required is mind-boggling. You're talking about rewriting the rulebook of global finance, and that's a task that would test the limits of international diplomacy and cooperation. Let's say the world's nations agree on a global currency reset. That's just the beginning. The next challenge is managing the economic fallout. Currencies would be revalued, debt burdens would shift, trade flows disrupted, governments need economic stability measures, interest rate adjustments, fiscal stimulus, trade agreements. Revaluation could lead to inflation. Imagine prices skyrocketing overnight. Implementing this would be like navigating a minefield. Moving away from fiat currencies towards asset-backed systems is a central idea of the global currency reset. Think gold, silver, commodities. It's a back-to-the-future idea rooted in the gold standard. The appeal is clear, money backed by something real. But implementing it globally is a logistical nightmare. Agreeing on assets and their value is complex. Preventing price manipulation is another challenge. Storage and security of vast quantities of assets are critical. The allure is undeniable, but the practical challenges are immense. Section 4, Rules of the Game, Regulatory Frameworks and Financial Law. Regulation is critical. The financial world is like the Wild West, full of opportunity and risk. A new global currency system would be like a shiny new car, irresistible to exploit. Without robust regulation, it invites chaos and abuse. New rules would govern currency exchange, trade, and transactions. These rules need enforcement with real consequences. This requires unprecedented international cooperation. A new global financial authority would oversee and enforce the system. Without strong regulation, a GCR and RV would fail, leaving the world worse off. Section 5. The Tech Frontier, Building the Infrastructure for a New Era. No discussion about a global currency reset is complete without addressing technology. We're talking about a digital-first world. A new financial system needs a rock-solid technological backbone, managing trillions in transactions daily, tracking currency values in real time, and securing sensitive data from cyber attacks. We're talking sophisticated algorithms and blockchain technology, creating a fast, secure, and transparent system. Globally integrated and interoperable, an incredible opportunity for a more efficient financial system. Section 1. The power brokers, political leadership, and the GCR agenda. Let's talk politics, folks. Any major shift in the global financial system would require the buy-in and active participation of world leaders. Some proponents of the GCR believe certain political figures are more likely to champion this cause. They point to leaders who have expressed skepticism about the current financial system or who have shown a willingness to challenge the status quo. But even the most powerful leader can't simply snap their fingers and make a GCR happen. We're talking about a complex, multifaceted issue with global implications. It's not just about one person or one country calling the shots. A GCR would require a delicate balancing act of diplomacy, negotiation, and compromise. It would require building consensus among nations with often divergent interests and priorities. Navigating the treacherous waters of international relations is key. Trust is often in short supply, and power plays are the name of the game. Section 2. Beyond Borders. The imperative of multilateralism. The days of one country dictating the terms of the global financial system are over. We live in an interconnected world. Economic fortunes are intertwined, and unilateral action can have unintended consequences. Implementing a GCR would require a multilateral approach, bringing together nations from all corners of the globe to hammer out new financial rules is essential. This wouldn't be easy. Overcoming deep-seated mistrust and navigating cultural differences is crucial. A GCR perceived as being imposed by one country is doomed to fail. It would be met with resistance and accusations of unfair advantage. The only way to ensure the success of a GCR is through a truly multilateral process, a process that's inclusive, transparent, and accountable to all stakeholders. This is the only way forward. Section 3. A New World Order, Geopolitical Shifts and the GCR. The prospect of a global currency reset raises questions about the existing world order. For decades, the US dollar has reigned supreme as the world's reserve currency, but a GCR could disrupt this established order, potentially leading to a more multipolar world. This shift wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. A more multipolar world could be more stable and equitable. It could lead to a more level playing field in international trade and finance. Emerging economies could have a greater voice in shaping the global economic agenda, but such a shift would also bring challenges. Increased competition among nations could fuel tensions and instability. Coordinating global economic policy could become more difficult. A GCR wouldn't just be about resetting currencies, it would be about resetting global power dynamics, redefining the rules of the game for the 21st century. The implications of such a shift would be far-reaching and profound. Section 4. BRICS and Beyond. Emerging Alliances and Currency Realignment. We're seeing the rise of new economic alliances and power blocks. One prominent example is BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These emerging economies are increasingly asserting themselves on the global stage. Some proponents of the GCR see BRICS as potential drivers of currency realignment. They argue that these countries are well positioned to challenge the dollar's dominance. They envision a future where currencies like the Chinese yuan or the Indian rupee play a more prominent role. Such a shift could have significant implications for global trade and investment. It's still too early to say whether BRICS will be the catalyst for a GCR, but the existing global financial order is under pressure. The rise of new economic powers is reshaping the global landscape. A GCR will likely be a product of these broader forces. Section 1. Guardians of the Global Economy, the Role of Financial Institutions. International financial institutions play a pivotal role in shaping the global financial system. Think of them as the referees and rule makers. They influence exchange rates and provide financial assistance to nations. In the context of a GCR, these institutions would be crucial. They would help design the new system and manage the transition. But their involvement raises questions. Would they embrace such a radical change? Would they promote a fair and equitable system or protect the status quo? Section 2. The IMF at the Crossroads of Global Finance. The International Monetary Fund, or IMF, often bails out struggling economies. They're like financial first responders. The IMF has been both praised and criticized for its role in the global economy. Some see it as a stabilizing force, others as a tool of the powerful. In a GCR, the IMF's role would be complex and potentially controversial. They have the expertise to play a constructive role in designing a new currency system. They could provide technical assistance and manage exchange rate fluctuations, but there are concerns the IMF might resist a GCR or shape it to benefit its most powerful members. The IMF could use its leverage to impose conditions on countries undergoing revaluation. This could undermine the goals of a more equitable financial system. The answers to these questions are far from clear. Section 3, Central Banks, Navigating the Revaluation Tide. Central banks are responsible for monetary policy and interest rates. In a GCR, central banks would be on the front lines. They would manage the transition to a new currency system. Imagine your country's currency is about to be revalued. Suddenly, your money is worth more. This creates challenges for central banks. They would need to manage inflation. A revalued currency could lead to a spike in prices. Central banks would use their tools to keep inflation in check. They would also need to worry about capital flight. Investors might start pouring in capital, driving up the value of your currency. This could create bubbles in asset markets. Central banks would have their work cut out for them. They would need to strike a delicate balance, managing inflation and stabilizing exchange rates, keeping their economies from going off the rails. Section 4, Development Banks, Bridging the Gap. Development banks focus on promoting economic growth and reducing poverty. They provide loans, grants, and technical assistance. In a GCR, development banks would have a critical role. They would ensure the transition is just and equitable. They would be attentive to the needs of developing countries. A GCR could exacerbate existing inequalities. Development banks would need to step in with financial assistance. They could promote sustainable and inclusive growth, prioritizing investments in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. Ensuring the benefits of a revalued currency are shared widely, working to ensure no one gets left behind. Section 1. A tale of two worlds, winners and losers in the GCR game. Let's talk about the potential economic impacts of a global currency reset. There are going to be winners and losers. Some folks will come out ahead, while others might find themselves on shakier ground. The idea of a GCR might sound appealing, but the economic impacts would be complex and unpredictable. It's not as simple as saying if your currency goes up, you're a winner. There are many factors at play. For some countries, a GCR could be a boon, their currencies could strengthen, and their purchasing power could increase. But for other countries, a GCR could be a real challenge. They could face inflation, debt crises, and a decline in living standards. The bottom line is that the economic impacts of a GCR would be uneven. Section 2, Debt Dilemma, Navigating the Repayment Maze. Let's talk about debt. Debt is like gravity. It's always there, and it has a way of pulling things down. In a GCR, debt could be one of the biggest wild cards. Many countries hold a significant amount of their debt in foreign currencies. Imagine if the dollar weakens significantly in a GCR scenario. Those debts become a lot more expensive to repay. Countries would have to cough up more of their own currency to make payments. This puts a strain on finances and the ability to invest in infrastructure, education, and healthcare. It can even lead to a debt crisis. On the flip side, countries that hold a lot of assets in foreign currencies could benefit. Their holdings would be worth more in their own currencies. Debt is a double-edged sword in a GCR scenario. It could create opportunities for some, but lead to financial instability for others. Now let's talk about inflation. In a GCR world, inflation could be a real wild card. It could erode purchasing power and create economic uncertainty. If currencies are revalued, it can have a ripple effect on prices. If your country's currency becomes stronger, imports become cheaper. This can lead to increased demand and push prices up. If your country's currency weakens, imports become more expensive. This means higher costs for oil, gas, electronics, and food. Central banks would try to manage inflation using their tools. But in a GCR scenario, their job would be tougher. They'd be dealing with new variables and unknowns. Inflation is a real risk in a GCR world. It could erode purchasing power and create economic instability. It could disproportionately impact the most vulnerable segments of society. Finally, folks, let's talk about the big picture. The potential for a global currency reset to reshape the global financial order, to redistribute wealth on a massive scale. For decades, the US dollar has reigned supreme as the world's reserve currency. But some experts believe that a global currency reset could upend this established order. They argue that it could lead to a more multipolar world, where other currencies like the euro, the UN, or even a new global currency play a more prominent role. The bottom line is that a global currency reset has the potential to be a game changer, folks. It could reshape the global financial order, redistribute wealth and power, and usher in a new era of economic and geopolitical uncertainty. So there you have it, folks. We've journeyed deep into the heart of the global currency reset, explored its potential benefits and its inherent risks. We've grappled with the complexities of revaluation, the challenges of international cooperation, the role of powerful financial institutions, and the potential for both economic upheaval and a more just financial order. And where does this leave us? Honestly, with more questions than answers. Because the global currency reset isn't just a financial concept, it's a paradox, a tangled web of hope and uncertainty, of promise and peril. On the one hand, the global currency reset embodies a deep yearning for change, a desire for a financial system that's fairer, more transparent, and more accountable. It speaks to those who feel left behind by the current system, those who believe that the deck is stacked against them. But on the other hand, the global currency reset is a leap into the unknown. It's a gamble, a roll of the dice on a global scale. And as with any gamble, there's no guarantee of a winning hand. The truth is, folks, we're living in a time of unprecedented economic change. The old rules are being rewritten, the global balance of power is shifting, the rise of digital currencies, the growing cloud of emerging economies, the increasing interconnectedness of the global financial system. In this environment, the global currency reset can't be dismissed. It's a symptom of a deeper unease. Is a global currency reset fact or fiction? It's a question that sparked countless debates and fueled endless speculation. The global currency reset exists in a liminal space where the lines between fact and fiction blur. It's a concept that's both tantalizingly close and frustratingly out of reach, like a mirage shimmering on the horizon. But perhaps that's the point. Perhaps it's more of a catalyst, a spark that ignites our imaginations. So let the debate rage on. Let the analysts crunch their numbers. Let the skeptics scoff and the proponents cheer. The future of finance will be shaped by all of us, by the choices we make and the world we choose to create. Don't miss the bus and subscribe.